Hello everyone, hope you're doing alright, I hope you're keeping safe, and of course I hope you're keeping sane. No, I won't be doing daily videos. I know you'll probably get sick of my face eventually. Obviously I had a little while off making any videos, and in that time obviously I've come up with a few things that I wanted to talk about, so I'm just getting them out there, getting them put down on video while I think of it. And then, in all likelihood, I'll start maybe doing one a week or something like that. You know, those of you who've been with me for a while will know that I'm not exactly the most consistent when it comes to uploading videos. But I think that's the best way, rather than forcing myself to stick to a schedule and end up rambling, which I have a propensity to do anyway. It's better just to sort of only make videos as and when there's something I think that might be beneficial or something that I'd just like to share with you guys. That said, if you're not subscribed to the channel, I would ask very kindly if you give that little subscribe button a tickle. You can always undo it at a later date if I've bored the hell out of you. And yeah, it really does help me reach a few more people. On that note, on to the subject of today's video. Now, yesterday I made a video, or it might have been the day before, who knows, I lose track of time. But I made a video talking about the reasons why we gamble. And more accurately, I would say the justifications, possibly excuses as to why we gamble. And I touched upon one such as, it's a leisure pursuit, it's recreational, it's just a bit of fun, isn't it? And obviously exposed how, for a lot of us, particularly myself, and for a lot of you guys watching this video, and for those who are on the cusp of a problem with gambling, that is just basically a bit of a lie, which is the the reason why the slogan "When the fun stops" is such a complete waste of space, because by the time the fun stopped, you've not realised, and actually you're far too far down the gambling rabbit hole to easily sort of claw your way back out. But the other reason I gave why we often tell ourselves, and indeed tell other people, why we gamble, is because we might win money. Sound a little flutter, you never know your luck. Maybe it's my lucky day, just gonna have a lucky pound, lucky tenner, quick acca. Who knows, it might come in. Those sorts of things, right? We want to convince ourselves that we are gambling to win money. And, to be fair, for a recreational gambler, for someone who doesn't have or isn't in danger of developing a gambling habit, that may very well be the case. It's why so many millions of people buy lottery tickets every month. The whole idea of, well, maybe, just maybe I'll be the lucky winner and it's going to change my life forever. Now, as I discussed in my last video, the lottery is somewhat of an outlier when it comes to gambling, and I don't know, although it wouldn't surprise me to learn that there probably are a handful of people who have lottery addictions, but certainly in my experience and from you guys talking to me and from my chats with other gamblers, it's very unusual for people to get addicted to that kind of gambling, purely because of the slow-moving nature of it. Things like sort of instant sports betting, casino games, online slots, fruit machines, fob teas, those sorts of things are far, far more common as a cause and as a means by which to perpetuate a gambling addiction. So why am I rambling on about this? Well, one thing I did say in my last video, which actually prompted a couple of comments from you guys, was that whilst we look at ourselves from a third-party perspective, which is what I encourage you to do maybe next time you're gambling, if you are still gambling, of course, we can look in and see whether or not we're actually enjoying ourselves. And I would possibly suggest, in fact, I would dare to say I'll put money on, if I was still a gambling man, that we're not. We're not having fun. We're not having pleasure. And that is whether we win or we lose. We often manage to convince ourselves that by gambling we are hoping to get the right result. We're hoping to walk out of that bookies, as probably would have most likely been my case, in profit, with more cash in your wallet than you went in with. And it would be remiss to say that doesn't happen. Because this is the thing. When someone from the outside pictures a gambling addiction, they picture someone who is always skint, who forever is always losing, who never has any money to their name and never walks away with any profit. And that's just not the case. Yes, of course, if you have a gambling addiction, you will always, in the long run, end up skint, because we don't stop. But that isn't to say there aren't instances, gambling sessions, days, whatevers, where we actually leave in profit. But why doesn't that make us happy? I said in my last video, we walk out with an empty feeling. And it is exactly that. It is an empty feeling. And there's two main reasons why winning doesn't bring us happiness. And the main reason being is we are not addicted to winning. We are purely addicted to the process of gambling. The common misconception with gambling addiction is with dopamine. people make the assumption, or quite often the perception is put out there, that dopamine is the feel-good chemical that your brain releases when you get a win from gambling, and that's what keeps us hooked. And whilst dopamine plays a huge part, possibly the biggest part, in maintaining and reinforcing a gambling addiction, the chemical itself is very much misunderstood. When we are gambling, dopamine is released at the point of expectation. For example, if you are playing FOBT roulette, and I'll probably use FOBTs for most of my examples in this video, and you put your bet on, and you push the start button. Now, between pushing that start button and the roulette wheel landing is the time at which most dopamine is likely to be released. It is the motion of suspense. In the same way that if you're playing a slot either online or in a bookies or whatever, if you get 2 bonus symbols land and you're waiting for the 3rd bonus symbol, that is when you get the biggest hit of dopamine. You'll also find this scenario, and this was very, very true for me. When you are expecting to gamble, you will also find that dopamine is released. I used to, when I left my house to go, wherever I was going, but I knew realistically I was going to the bookies, wasn't I? I would almost run the last bit of the distance from my house to the nearest bookies. That's because dopamine was being released in my brain because I had the expectation and the anticipation that I was going to be gambling. Now, just supposing that I went into that bookies and I played whatever games I was playing on the FOBTs or betting on whatever I was betting on, and I came away with profit, I had less of a feel-good experience leaving that bookies, albeit with much more money in my wallet, than I did when I went in. And the reason being is that gambling, the process of gambling, is what we are addicted to, not the outcome or the perceived potential outcome. It's the reason why we take other substances. It's the reason we're addicted to anything. If you look at, say, an illegal drug, some form of narcotic or, whatever, the anticipation of taking said drug, and I include alcohol in this, the process of taking the drug and the experience of it is what gives you the buzz. There is no net result that you're after particularly. There's no positive end result to your experience with drugs or with alcohol or whatever. I will dare to bring porn into this equation. And of course there are other neurochemicals at play with pornography, but the thought, the suspense, the use of pornography is when you get the feel-good factor. Let's face it, there is, at the risk of being graphic, there is no feel-good factor once you have concluded your use of pornography. And gambling is very much the same thing. Of course, the difference with gambling, as is very easy to argue, is that there will be a net result afterwards. Whereas with alcohol, yes, you might have a hangover or whatever, or drugs may have a come down, and pornography similarly sort of psychologically. But with gambling, there may be a positive net result. And like I say, it's not always a negative. We don't always lose, do we? So why do we feel so crap afterwards, even when we've won? Well, the reason is, I believe, the second main reason why gambling victories or gambling winnings don't bring us pleasure is, again, something I touched upon in a previous video. It's because it's a shallow win. It's a hollow win. Because whereas a recreational gambler may get a winning horse in the National or have their sort of £2 football acca come in on a Saturday and they've won £100 or whatever, the recreational gambler would suddenly think of all the things they can go and spend that money on. That will make, albeit a very, very small, but an improvement in some respect to their lives. They will have some material possession or something that they didn't have previously. And that's great. Or they'll just have more money in the bank, or they can go and put a deposit on a holiday or whatever. Again, I spoke about this previously. But as a gambler, we don't have that because of the way we perceive money. Money just goes back into the pot and becomes more and more gambling tokens. It's purely used by means of a way to perpetuate our addiction. So yes, we may have won money today, but we know that that cash in our wallet is likely to go back, be it the next day, be it the next week, whatever. But in time, that money will again diminish to nothing, because that's the nature of the process of gambling. We can't win because we can't stop. A couple of people said on my video about our inability as gamblers to spend money, they said actually quite the contrary. When I have a big win, I go out and I buy a tangible asset. I go and buy something for myself because that way I can't lose the money again. And actually, I can completely relate to this. If a few videos ago, or quite a long time ago before my hiatus, I was sporting a Supreme jumper or hoodie, which a lot of people took the piss out of. But anyway, that's by the by. I have that, I have a couple of watches, I have a Gucci t-shirt, I have some other clothes and stuff and bits and pieces, right? And this isn't a flex, trust me. Okay, but these were things that I had bought with gambling winnings, because I thought just like that. I thought, well, actually, you know what? If I buy something, then at least I've got something. You know, if I win money, if I rush out almost straight away or as soon as it's feasible, before I get an opportunity to re-gamble that money, if I buy something, then at least I've got something. And yeah, okay, it's a fairly rational thing to think. Major flaw with this thing, and this is something that I experienced. Having things, having stuff, spending money is only part of the battle. What you need is to have money available when it is required to live your life in a comfortable way. So, ultimately, as gamblers, if we are compulsive gamblers, unless we're incredibly wealthy or got a trust fund or have an unlimited supply of cash, we will generally find ourselves broke at some point, cash poor. And realistically, on a day-to-day setting, it doesn't matter whether you're cash poor with a load of stuff in your wardrobe or cash poor with nothing to show for it. The problems that being skint, the problems that gambling losses cause you are the same regardless, and that is the underlying root cause. Yes, you might end up with a load of stuff. I've got loads of stuff from my gambling days that I bought so I didn't lose the money. But unless they're instantly liquefiable assets, I guess there's an argument that watches and things like that can be liquidated and turned into cash, but you're gonna take a substantial hit on them. Unless they're liquidatable assets, they're no use to you. What you get from gambling recovery, what you get from abstinence from gambling is not tons of money. What it is a level of financial security that enables peace of mind and knowing that whatever life throws at you, within reason, you are fiscally able to cope with and respond to. So no amount of stuff, no amount of winnings is going to ever give that pleasure, that long-lasting happiness to a gambling addict, because the money's going to go back. And that is, again, this will be my last point because I'm already waffling, right? That is one massive differential to determine, right? There's massive gulf between happiness and pleasure, and the two are so keenly disassociated it's very hard to put into words. Pleasure is a very short-term feeling. It is the release of neurochemicals through a process or a substance or a behaviour that gives us a short-term buzz. More of this you have, the less happiness you're ultimately going to have, because you're going to be setting the bar for actual true pleasure far too high. Your dopamine resilience will go up through the roof, and the only way you will ever be able to achieve any kind of transient enjoyment is by partaking in the processes and the substances and all the rest of it that release the highest level of dopamine and other neurochemicals. And that is why, as addicts, we often find very little pleasure in anything other than our vice of choice. When you get into recovery, when you manage to maintain a significant period of abstinence, your resilience to dopamine actually starts to drop, which is why you then start finding pleasure in more simple things. And eventually, over time, you can start to get genuine happiness because your threshold for pleasure has been lowered sufficiently that something as simple as going for a walk or enjoying a relaxed day can actually make you happy. I've rambled on an awful lot there, and I've probably covered a load of ground about stuff that I've spoken about already, but it just seemed to tie in. And like I say, if you are an addict, then you will never get pleasure from winning. And whilst there are some exceptions, most of the time we're never going to win enough money to change our lives. So this shouldn't be really confused with the money can't buy happiness debate, which is something I'll possibly talk about another time. But we're never going to win enough money to change our lives forever and prevent us from ever gambling again. So why bother? Okay, that's definitely enough for me now. I've rambled far too long. Stay safe, stay sane, everyone. Catch you on the next one, and subscribe if you haven't. All the best.